Howdy, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Dead Air. I am your host, Evil Deaddie. Today, we're going to be doing something a little bit different. I know the last two, I've kind of just came up with lists of movies that I wanted to talk about, based kind of on a topic that I was interested in at the time. I think today, I'm going to just try to deep dive into a movie, just one specific movie. Took a bunch of notes on it. Going to do a walkthrough of the movie, so this will have a shit ton of spoilers for the movie I'm about to talk about. Also, if I look grimy and grubby, I just worked out. I just went and changed my shirt. I was like, man, I need to shower before I start recording, but you guys can't smell me, so it doesn't matter. I don't have to shower. I'll shower after. Today took a long time to do all the things I wanted to do, and I need to get this out of the way if I want to be able to edit it tonight. Because usually I would do this recording on Monday, edit it on Wednesday. Today is Wednesday, so I don't have a whole lot of time. Run a little bit behind schedule. So yeah, if I look fucking yacked today, if you're watching, it's because I just worked out. I am naturally that big, and if you're impressed, you're welcome. Back into the topic of what we will be doing. So I saw Longlegs last weekend. Don't worry, this is not a spoiler review of Longlegs. I think people still need time to see it, so I don't really want to talk about that in a way that not everyone's ready to talk about it. So maybe later on we'll do an episode where we talk about Longlegs, because spoiler alert, I did really like Longlegs. But Longlegs made me think of another movie that I had only seen once that I also really liked. And it warranted a rewatch right after. And as I was rewatching, I was like, man, I just have to talk about this movie. And I've noticed people online talking about this movie too. So I wanted to get in there before everyone else started to. But this movie deserves it. The movie is 1997's Cure by Kiyoshi Kurosawa. Kiyoshi Kurosawa also did Pulse, if you've ever seen Pulse. I have not seen Pulse. I'm actually debating watching it if I have time tonight or tomorrow, because wow. Cure was just so good. Just a, I guess, quick synopsis of what Cure is about, in case you haven't seen it, which a lot of you probably haven't. It's not the most popular movie, though it deserves to be. The best description before I get into spoilers would probably be to say, in Tokyo in the 90s, there's a bunch of occurrences with people, citizens, just murdering other citizens for no apparent reason, without really any motivation behind it. And this detective that we follow is trying to figure out why that's happening. Because no one else seems to understand what's going on. If that sounds really cool to you, pause this right now. Find Cure. I know it's streaming on Criterion Channel. If you're a big-ass film nerd like myself, you might have the Criterion Channel. If not, I'm sure you can rent it on Amazon or maybe Apple, something like that. But it is well worth the watch. And if you can go into it without having spoilers, do it. Because the first time I watched this, I didn't even put out a Letterboxd review. I didn't know how I felt about it. I knew it was a good movie, but I didn't know. I knew I enjoyed it, but I couldn't really put my words onto paper to say how I felt about it. So I knew I wanted to do a second watch. And if you haven't seen Longlegs either, and you're worried about any spoilers, I will say that Longlegs made me think of this movie, so there's very little chance that there's a possibility that if I guess you're a detective yourself, you could figure out the correlation when hearing me talk about Cure. I wouldn't be too worried about it, because I don't think I would say anything that you wouldn't have seen in the trailer for Longlegs. But hey, I'm anti-spoilers, so I'm going to put all those spoiler warnings out there for you. If any of that makes it to where you can't watch this or listen to it, pause it, watch those things, come back, and we'll talk about it. But yeah, I want to get into Cure. Let me take a big old gulp of my yerba that I'm still not sponsored by. Yerba mate. Energizes me through my day. I really don't drink that much caffeine anymore either. I've been trying to cut out coffee. Coffee wrecks my stomach, dude. I almost got a coffee today. I was like, no, don't do that. I don't have bad poopies during my podcast. So I decided to just go with the yerba again. Keep it safe. Also, people just love texting me when I'm finally doing the podcast. So we're going in airplane mode. No one talked to me. Daddy's busy. Cure. Like I said before, Cure's from 1997 from Kiyoshi Kurosawa. It follows, the main character is Detective, I'm going to butcher some of these names and I'm so sorry. Detective Takabe. And then his friend is in it, probably the second biggest supporting character, not including the antagonist, is a psychiatrist named Sakuma. They're kind of the duo that is going through this series of weird events that no one else can explain. So there are not our two main characters. Our main character, our protagonist, and a supporting protagonist. So the movie starts off, and I'm just going to go through, I took a shit ton of notes. If you could see how many notes we got here. I'm going to just describe the movie. We're going to go through this fucking movie together. And, excuse me, you're definitely not going to get everything that you would get from watching it, but hopefully you have now seen it, or if you are interested in seeing it, us going through this together, you will see how much this movie affected me while watching it, how much I enjoyed it, just how much of a masterwork it was cinematically. Just I'm so impressed by this film. So we start off in a hospital, and it's a woman talking to a doctor, and she's reciting a fairy tale about this man named Bluebeard who comes and he picks up this like peasant girl and she marries him, and she goes blah blah blah. The girl kills Bluebeard, and we're like, oh, okay, well, that's all right, that's cool. And then it jumps to this other guy that just leaves the hospital, and the next thing we've got is this guy walking down this street, and he just randomly walks up, grabs a pipe off the wall of this like tunnel pass, yoinks it off, water's pouring out of it, and something that's important there that will come up later is the lights all flashing around him and blinking in this tunnel. And it jumps from that to a scene of this guy in a bedroom with a woman. The woman is sitting in the bed. She's sitting up, and he just walks around. He's holding the pipe, and she's just kind of looking at him. Holding the pipe in the bedroom. You know what I'm saying? She's holding the pipe and looking at him, and the music's still upbeat. And it's still kind of fun. And then he just walks up and just pounds her in the head. Just destroys her head with this pipe, kills the shit out of her. And then it finally jumps to our main character. So our main character, the detective, Takabe, comes in, and everyone's like, well, this guy doesn't have a criminal past. He doesn't have any motivation to this other than this woman we find out is a prostitute, hired the prostitute, killed her, and now he's missing. But he left all of his clothes. He left all the weapons. He left his wallet. Everyone knows his identification. He's now hopefully easy to find because he just did the deed. Well, did one deed, maybe, did this deed, killing her, and then dipped out. And they're walking around trying to figure it out. And our detective's walking down the hall, and he hears something. And he just looks down, and there's like a little shaft that you can open up. Opens it up. That guy's just butt naked, sitting in there hiding. And he's just cowering. He looks terrified, like he has no idea what he did. And he's scared as if he's the victim in this situation. And that's our first instance of the crimes happening. And I will just say, the part of this girl just getting hit in the head with this pipe, it's, how do I want to say it? There's such a good dichotomy of tone because the movie starts off with this fairy tale, and then the music is still kind of upbeat, and the ambiance around it is upbeat, and nothing about it is eerie or I would say evil. And then we watch, and it shows it on the camera, him beating the shit out of this girl. It's just a couple, boom, 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 couple whacks. And she's done for. And then we jump out of this. So we've now jumped from these like 3 characters to who, if you hadn't already seen this, you probably don't know who the main character is going to be yet. To now we're on a beach, and there's a guy out there, and I think he's reading, just sitting on the beach, having his moment to himself. And then it pans out wide, and there's a guy just walking all by himself. And the shots, whenever we meet this mysterious guy, and it will go on throughout the rest of the movie too, is it never really gets super personal with him, except for moments where it really matters. Like, you don't get the close-up of feeling like you're there with that person until the movie wants you to. It's a lot of empty spaces. It's a lot of space in between characters while there's dialogue happening, and it's all whenever this man is there. So this man walks up, he's talking to the guy on the beach, and he's just asking him a bunch of questions. Where am I? The guy answers, you're at so-and-so beach. He goes, oh, where? Well, you're at this beach. I just told you that. Oh, okay. Well, what day is it? Like, what month is it? Where am I? Finally, the guy goes, well, how about I just get you some help? Let's take you out of here. Let's go get you some help. You come with me. We'll figure out why you're in such a bad place and get you back to your friends and family. He brings him back to his house. This guy that was reading on the beach is now making them some coffee. Him and his wife are trying to just be nice and figure out how they can help this stranger that seems to be really lost, maybe have some brain damage that could have happened to him. And it's then that the character that's helping out finds his jacket, and he sees a name in it, and the name is Mamiya. Mamiya? It's Mamiya. Mamiya. That's what I'm going to say. I might even just call him M, because as I was typing, I just put M. That way I could type quickly while watching the movie. He's talking to him, and he just can't get any actual questions answered from Mamiya. And Mamiya just starts roaming around his house or his apartment, not answering anything. But he's coherent enough to ask this guy questions about himself, but he can't answer any questions that the guy helping him is asking him. So he keeps asking him, so what do you do? Who are you? Like, leave a very open-ended questions. Who are you? What do you do? And the guy's like, oh, I'm an elementary school teacher. Like, this is what I do. Well, who are you? Well, like, I'm a husband. I'm a teacher. I do this stuff. And next is what we find the first real eerie part happening in this movie. The first part where I'd say it actually tonally shifts. And the ambience behind it, as soon as Mamiya, he flicks out a lighter, and there's just something that the teacher who's helping him just locks onto the lighter. And it's from then on that we know something's up about this guy. Like, he's not just someone that has like short-term memory loss or amnesia. He's working with something here. He knows what he's doing almost. And he gets him to answer all these questions about himself, and the music changes up, and then we cut away from them. So the movie does a thing quite a bit where it puts us in a situation where the beginning of people meeting Mr. Mamiya is the most important part of their interaction. It's the in-between that doesn't matter, and then it's what happens later on because they met. So we leave there. We go back home with the detective. We find out his wife's sick. She's got some illness going where she might actually have dementia or amnesia of some sort. I don't think they actually say what it is. And he promises her, like, hey, I'm sorry. I know I've been working a lot. But once I'm done with this case is just really important. I can't leave it. Once I'm done with this case, we'll go have a trip. We'll go do something nice. We'll go on vacation. And she gets real excited. And we get that nice little moment. It jumps back to the teacher that Mr. Mamiya was talking to, jumping out of the window. And we go back inside. We're with the detectives now, and they're showing us stuff. And we see that the teacher who was just talking about how he's two things in the world, he's a teacher and he's a husband, has now brutally murdered his wife. So he killed her, and he carved an X in her throat like this. If you're watching, you can see it's just right here, right where your clavicle meets your neck. Carved an X right there. And that's important because when we come back to the detectives and they're looking at stuff, we find out as an audience when we see up on the board, they do that cool shot that's in every crime, thriller, horror movie. Excuse me. Where they've got the Charlie Day Pepe Sylvia thing. It's all the pictures and files up on a board and they're nailed on, and we see a few other cases, maybe 4 or 5, that have the X's in the throat up there. So we know this is not the first time that something like this has happened. So we know something is going on that makes all these crimes correlated. And once they're done with that, we come back out. Like I said, it jumps in and out of scenes. You see the beginning, not the middle, and you see them at the end, is what it feels like. So the next beginning that comes around is Mr. Mamiya is sitting on top of the roof of a house, it feels like. It's a house or a store, doesn't matter. Sitting up there, a cop drives by on a bicycle, and he's yelling at him hey, get down from there. You can't be up there. You're going to get hurt. You're going to hurt yourself. As soon as he goes up there, Mamiya just jumps off. I don't know if he jumps off or he falls off or he slides off. Either way, he is now gone from the top of this building to the ground. Jumps to, I guess in Tokyo, they have things called police boxes. They don't have, which they might now because this was in the 90s, but at this time they had police boxes, which was maybe for smaller towns outside of Tokyo where a couple officers hang out. They go out there, they do their patrols. They go back in there. That's their little hub. They're in this police box, and this officer and his partner's just working off the side with the officer that found him, brought in Mr. Mamiya, and he's asking him who are you? Why were you up there? Are you okay? Because he seems okay, but he can't answer any of the questions. And it is the same guy from the scene prior that wasn't answering any questions, Mr. Mamiya. So we know that he has done this once before, but the cop just assumes, he hit his head. That's why he can't answer me. He's got somewhat brain damage, but he's walking around fine. He's all right, well, let me do my paperwork, and I'll get you to the hospital because you don't seem that bad. We'll hang out here if you don't want to answer my questions. And Mamiya does what he did before. He lights up his cigarette, pulls out his lighter, and the partner had already left. He's going to do his patrols, and he starts talking to the cop. And he starts asking him, who are you? What do you do? And the officer's, well, I'm a cop. This is what I do. I help people. And it's the focus. Just any of these scenes, whenever Mamiya pulls out this lighter, it is so captivating. And these are the moments where I said, whenever you see Mamiya, it's wide. He's walking around. We're not close to him. It's once he flips out that lighter, that is when it cuts in. When we get close, you see if this is the lighter, it's coming up here, and we're seeing the focus of the subjects go on to this lighter. It's similar to as if someone held up a necklace and they dangled it in front of you like this. You're getting very sleepy. If someone did that to you, it seems that Mamiya is doing this with the lighter. And it, like I said, it starts that situation and then it jumps. So now that we're away from the cops, we're back at the hospital and we're meeting a new doctor. And hold on, what I write here? Oh, this part. I didn't put much detail here, but we go back to the hospital and we find out, well, we don't find out, I didn't put together until now, that the woman who was talking about the fairy tale at the very beginning was Detective Takabe's wife. And the doctor goes, hey, like I found that book with that fairy tale you're talking about of Bluebeard. He's like, do you remember reading this? And she goes, I don't know what you're talking about. That scene is just there for you to see that Takabe's wife is sick. She is ill. And it's getting to a point where she might be deteriorating quicker than all these people expected. These people aren't old. I would say they're maybe in their 30s at this time. It's not like she's a 70-year-old woman that, oh, well, this happens with age. Like, you lose your memory. No, this like 35-year-old woman now can't remember what she said yesterday. So that's just big for the relationship between our main character and his wife. We then come back to Takabe. He's walking down that tunnel that the first what word am I thinking of? You're not the victim, you're the person who did the crime, the criminal, what's the opposite of victim? Why can't I think of the opposite of victim? We're the perpetrator, the guy who did the first murder, where he grabbed that pipe and we see the light flashing and we see the pipe missing still and we see Takabe looking up there and the light's flickering at him. And you could tell that he's starting to piece together. And another great part of this is I feel like they give you scenes that give you the ability to go, oh, is this because of this? This is where this puzzle piece fits in. And then a scene or two later, you'll have someone blurt out, not like exposition, but like one line that would be, oh, this, like, hypnosis because of light is common because of this. And you go, oh, like, I'm correct. He saw what I saw. So you get to think along with the detective. I really like that about it. Instead of it, I don't know, I guess I'm so used to things. I'm an anime guy too, so. And one of the worst things in anime is them going, oh, this really cool thing just happened in the story and plot-wise, and then they spend twice that amount of time explaining to you what you just saw. So this movie's very good at showing and not telling. So it's showing us that there's a possible situation of hypnosis going on. But what are cops going to do with hypnosis? The occult and supernatural aren't exactly written into laws. So that's where we're at here. He's catching on to that. We now cut back to the cop that Mr. Mamiya was talking to. He's back in the police box with his partner, and we're really far away in this shot, and we're watching. It looks like they're done for the day, maybe a changing of shifts, and he walks out. He's going to take out the trash, and his partner's like, all right, well, blah, blah, I'll see you tomorrow or something like that. And he throws away the trash behind him, and then he looks up. And I think what's important here is it looks like he looks up at the sun. And he ponders for a bit, and he looks at his partner, and he pulls out his gun and just pops his partner like twice. He might actually just do it once. I don't know. The amount of shots doesn't matter. I just put my phone in airplane mode. How am I getting texts? Does airplane mode not turn off text notifications? I don't usually do that, so I don't know. So yeah, he shoots his partner, then he crouches down, pulls out a knife, and he carves an X. Carves an X into his throat. So now we know as an audience that Mr. Mamiya there's something he can do, whether it's magical or he's giving them drugs or some sort. He can make these people kill for him, but they seem to be killing people that it's not like Mr. Mamiya like had a vendetta against, or at least that we would know of, had a vendetta against the teacher's wife or this cop's partner. And what's after that? Yeah, so then after that, Mamiya goes to the hospital, and it's not with the doctor that was meeting with, I think I swapped around a thing. There was a part earlier where we meet a woman doctor, and the only real significant thing is she like does a physical exam for this guy, says he has the flu or something, checks his lymph nodes, and then he's gone. That's all we see of her. So now we're back to her after these cops, and it's Mamiya getting checked up by her. And he's doing his thing of where she's talking, and he's like, I don't know where I'm at. I don't know what's going on. Where am I? Who am I? And she is checking him out, obviously, because he just fell off of a building. So she's like, okay, well, something's going on here. Something's wrong with him. He goes, can I smoke? She's like, no, you can't do that. This is a hospital. And this is where my brain started to go, oh, well, if he can't use his lighter, then he's not going to be able to hypnotize this woman. And he gets up as she's writing down paperwork, and he just walks over to a sink, and he goes, I need water. And he pours himself a water, and we're sitting there, and then it's not exactly like a score change, but maybe I was just noticing something amplify in the background that was making like the diegetic sounds louder. Like when we were at the teacher's house, the waves just started crashing super loudly. And when you're in this hospital, it feels like there's something along the lines of those waves behind you. And he didn't pull out the lighter, but it's as he's like looking at this glass of water, and he tips over the glass of water, and she's standing up and she's sitting down looking at him. And that's when it goes from being out wide and it cuts in. So we now know Mr. Mamiya is doing his thing to this girl, and he doesn't need a lighter. She's looking down, and I think this is one of the eeriest parts too, because she goes to look up, and he goes, don't look at me. And she like puts her head back down, and she's staring at the water as it rolls closer to her. And you can see like the light refracting in it, and it's like glaring off. And then she goes to look up again, and without hearing footsteps or anything, he's right here, like right in front of her, and he just holds her head and pushes it back down so that she stares at the water. I thought that was super cool, because up until this point, we hadn't really seen any inhuman movements from this guy. Nothing supernatural that he was like physically doing. We think he might be able to manipulate these people, but we didn't. I'm saying we as an audience, but I never questioned up until this point if he was a supernatural being himself until this, because it's like he glides over or teleports over even. And there's a few times in this where he does this, and they don't really talk about it because people don't notice it unless they're being hypnotized, which it also could be because as an audience, we're going through the hypnosis that the subject to Mamiya is going through. So maybe we get the tunnel vision and we're not given the sounds because they wouldn't be paying attention to that and they wouldn't be hearing that. But I thought it was a really cool thing that they threw in that made it seem like, oh, maybe this man himself is otherworldly. So he's now done his hypnosis on the woman doctor. And we find out at that point, the most important thing from that scene itself is that he doesn't need his lighter to do this. But what I picked up on there is it seems he just needs some form of light. As long as he has light, he's fine. Another thing that I noticed here. Okay, yeah, I didn't read on. I was just going off the top of my head. But in my notes, he starts talking about her personal life when asking her questions, without her saying it, and he shouldn't know these things about her. So he's calling out how it must be hard to be a woman in like a man's work field, like being a doctor. And he starts calling her lesser than men and all this stuff, which he's saying what she's thinking. And he's like, you wanted to do this because, not because you wanted to help people, because you wanted to cut into a man. And I remember the first time you looked at a carcass and you had to dissect it, and you were so happy it was a man because you got to get back at men. And she's not denying it, she's not saying anything, but you can just see her like looking at him in a way of, how do you know that? Why do you know that? I didn't tell you that. I just told you I'm a doctor. Like, this is what I do. And he does this to everyone. Everyone except for later on, him and Takabe seem to have a back and forth to where he can't do it to him. Something about Takabe doesn't allow Mr. Mamiya to get into his head and spurt out these things about his personal life that he could do to everyone else. So after that, yes. We're now talking to the cop. So the Detective Takabe and Sakuma are interrogating the cop who killed his partner. And the thing that comes out here is they're trying to find a motivation and a reason for why he would have done this. Because none of the other murderers had any reason. And this guy's a cop, so hopefully he will help them. He's also law enforcement. He should know why he killed another cop, especially one that was his partner. And the cop starts talking about how he hated his partner, how his partner just nagged him, and he was just a stick in the mud to work with. They're like, okay, so you killed him because you were mad at him, because you hated him. He goes, well, I hated him, but I was never mad at him. And I was never calmer than when I killed him. And that's when they start piecing together that maybe hypnosis is actually an element in these murders. And Sakuma and Takabe had been talking before about light, and Sakuma takes his light, a little flashlight that like a doctor would have to like peer in your mouth, and he starts blinking it at him. And it starts making the cop really uncomfortable. And he stops, and Takabe's like, no, keep doing it. And the cop gets up, tries to like run away from them, like, stop doing that, like, you're really freaking me out. And he does it more to him, and then he gets up and he's like, I need a water. And he goes over, and again, another thing popping up, another motif, water. So something about the light and the refraction and the water, the reflections that are triggering these people to feel this way. And he grabs like a stir of some sort, because it was next to a coffee pot and a water cooler. And he walks up to the guard that's just watching the door. It's not the detective, our main character. And he just takes it and he goes across him. And he goes, as if he's cutting an X into his throat like he did to his partner. And they're like, okay, all right. Now we know we're onto something. Now we know that these people have been hypnotized in some way. How is this guy where is this man? Who is he? And why is he able to hypnotize these random people into killing people that are close to them? And now it goes. Oh, this part was really cool, if this is the right part. Oh, okay. So the next thing, we follow this man into the bathroom. As he goes in the bathroom, it cuts to the left, and on the floor in this restroom is a dead body, and it's the woman doctor. And she is just, in the same way that Miyama, did I just say it wrong? Mamiya. Sorry. I'm doing better than I thought I would at keeping these names together. Mamiya described the doctor wanting to dissect men. She is now doing that in this men's restroom on the ground, where she has carved an X into this. I think we can assume he was just some random man, because now that we have talked to the cop, we know that it seems that whatever Mamiya does makes these people lash out at what they hate, what they dislike. And the cop had a dislike or a hatred towards his partner, and this doctor seems to have a hatred built up towards just men. So I don't think this was like a close person to her. This is just a man in general. And we get one of the coolest scenes in this. Actually, two cool scenes are going back to back. One after this too, if this is the right thing. I'm not reading it right now, but where at the X, because she's dissecting him, peels up from the top of the X and starts to pull his face off, and then it cuts away. I thought that part was so cool. The effects on this are so subtle, but they work so well. And it's just the slow peel, I think, really sells it here. Because they could have just ripped it off and cut the scene. But it's because she's being medical about it. She's still doing it as if she's digging into the cadaver that she went through medical school working on. And this guy walks in and he's like, holy shit, what the fuck are you doing? And they leave. Or it cuts out of that, and now we know that this woman, she got arrested. She's just another victim to Mamiya. Next, now that the woman doctor is killed, the detective is Detective Takabe, our main character. Sorry, I just hit the microphone. Our main character is running around the hospital because they know someone that was brought in by the cop they were interrogating is at this hospital, and it now is the only one. It has to be a subject that this woman doctor has worked with. So it's narrowing down who it could be. So they're like, okay, well, there's a guy in here that no one can describe. This has to be him. Let's go find him. And he's not in any of the rooms. And it's like, I think they wander into some abandoned part of the hospital or just a building next to it. And it's pitch black in here. And Takabe is just like looking through the wall, or not through the wall, but through the doorway. And it's dark in there, but there's a little light behind him. So it's just like a silhouette. And you hear Mamiya say something. And then his cigarette, just like the cherry of him sucking on his cigarette, lights up. And he's like, who are you? Like, what are you doing in here? And it goes away. He goes, like, who are you? Where am I? Where are you? He's trying to bring in Takabe into his hypnosis. And Takabe starts like walking in there, and it's too dark for him to really see. All he could see was the cherry of the cigarette. And he walks over there, and the cigarette's just sitting there, and he puts out the cigarette, and Mamiya's like gone. So he runs to another room, and he can't find him. And he's like, where is he? And this is another instance of, and this brings me back to where I was saying, maybe we don't hear him walk because the subject is under hypnosis. Because I don't think Takabe's under hypnosis here. And we still don't hear him run out of the room or anything. He seemingly just disappears. He teleports out. And they end up fighting him in the other room. And finally, they can now bring him in. Just the shot of him smoking that cigarette was, it was so eerie and creepy and cool. So good. And like I said, just this little hint of the occult going along with it just amplifies how dangerous this situation is for our main character, Takabe. Because we as an audience don't know what he's dealing with yet. We know it's someone that is able to manipulate these people in some way. And now our main character is finally getting to the point of where he knows kind of what we know. Okay, how is this man able to manipulate these people to do this stuff? And they bring him in. They start interrogating him. He shows them all these pictures of the people with the X's in their necks and stuff like that. He's like, what do you know about this? He goes, what do you know about that? Oh, do you like this? I don't like this. Who are you? What do you do? And the detective shows him a picture of himself, and he looks at it. He goes, I don't know who that is. He goes, well, that's you. So I don't know how you don't know who that is. And he looks at himself in the mirror and confirms, oh, I guess that does look like me. And the detective, I think, Takabe starts feeling like he's playing with him. Like he can't get these answers because of like the attitude that Mamiya has. So he just snaps on him. He like lunges at him like he's going to hit him, and he pulls away. And then Sakuma comes in, and Sakuma, was that it? Yeah, I think that's the psychiatrist's name. he comes in, he like pulls him away from me. He's like, no, you can't do that. Like, hold back. Don't snap on him. Don't freak out. Keep it cool. And then they get out of there and they talk a bit more about everything. But this is our first instance of someone that Mamiya is trying to hypnotize, not giving him his information that he wants. He's not, Takabe is not playing his game. So when he asks him these personal questions, he's like, well, I'll answer you if you answer me. So it leads to a situation where it doesn't look like Takabe can get hypnotized by this because he's not giving him what he wants. So he wasn't looking at the lighter. He wasn't going through water, like shining light at him. He's not checking the boxes that would lead to hypnosis. Now the detective comes back home. Something I didn't bring up too is throughout the movie, whenever the detective comes home, Detective Takabe comes home, his wife, just something about her brain condition, she seems to only really remember doing chores. So she'll halfway do chores throughout the day and leave stuff going. So whenever he comes home, he turns off the washing machine. And it's really sad because it's every time he comes home. We come to his apartment like 5 or 6 times, and you can see each time he's just like, he understands that she can't help it, but he's tired that he has to do this at home when his home should be his sanctuary, away from like all these terrible demons that he's facing at work. And now he just has to come back home and try to take care of his wife, who just isn't of the right mind and can't take care of herself. So he turns that off and he's walking around. He notices his wife's missing. He runs out. He finds her just wandering around the streets. She got lost when going to the store. This is the second time in the movie she gets lost. She gets lost going to the doctor when I was earlier talking about it, when she doesn't remember the fairy tale she talked about. So we see, it's just every now and then it throws in a scene that shows how much her mind is declining. And he tells everyone, he tells all the other officers, like, get rid of all of Miyamiya's stuff. Don't let him have any belongings, like put him in clothes that we own, things like that. And they notice a bunch of burns on his back that Sakuma says it looks like he was burned from metal. So this is narrowing down where they could be, where he could be from, where he could work, where he could live. And they narrow down to an apartment. They find Miyamiya's apartment, and it is practically abandoned, like he hadn't been there in a long time, and is just filled with books on psychoanalysis and hypnosis and personality disorders. And we find out that Miyamiya was a medical student that was studying in psychology, so that's why he has access to all these books. But he had a lot of things that had to do about animals and magnetism. There's something I had quoted because it literally said animals and magnetism, and then mesmerism. And then a cool thing about the apartment that he had was it looked like all the lights were covered that way, so he wouldn't use them. And I think that's because light for him is a tool that he was trying to develop his craft of being able to mesmerize these people. And on our way into this apartment, we notice a bunch of animals out somewhere. I don't quite understand why there were like chickens and monkeys in cages, unless this was also a part of Miyamiya's apartment, because then it makes sense, because we find out that he's testing on these monkeys. So it comes along with the animals and magnetism. He goes into his bathroom, and there's a big towel over the shower head, yanks that off, and there's an old monkey carcass on there with an X through its throat, proving to us that this is the right apartment and that Mamiya has been testing this on animals, assumingly to perfect it to be able to use on humans. And then right after, as this is happening, Takabe gets like flashes that we see of the animals that he just saw after seeing the monkey, of them running around, and then a flash of his wife. And he just gives him like a feeling that something isn't right. So he runs home, and when he gets home, he finds his wife hanged herself. Or I don't know if I can't say that like on YouTube. He finds his wife has unalived herself. I don't think I'll get just for saying the H word that I said. Excuse me. Finds that she's done that, and he's just heartbroken. He drops to the floor, and he's yelling, and he's crying. And then she comes back. She's, what are you doing? Are you okay? Like, what happened? And he's looking at her like, you were just up there, dead. How are you here? He doesn't say any of this, but we saw what he saw, and she's fine. So he had a glimpse of a dream or a premonition of some sort that showed his wife dying, and it scares the shit out of him. But she is now okay. This is, I think, the first instance of a handful that come up that are very dreamlike. And the next scene is... Sukuma starts telling Takabe he thinks it's too dangerous for him to keep talking to Miyamiya. And we all know, just as an audience, that Takabe's too deep. He's not going to stop until he figures this case out. So he ignores his friend. He goes to see Mamiya. And Mamiya knows. So he's asking Takabe all the questions of who are you? What are you doing? And he tells Takabe that he goes, I know you saw your wife dead, right? And that's our first instance of where it seems like Mamiya is finally in Takabe's head. And I think an important thing here, and I guess I'll talk about it later when we've got the full story done. But an important thing, no, I just said I wouldn't talk about it. So then Takabe's like, well, how do you know about that? Have you been talking to the other officers? And Mamiya just goes, yeah, the other officers told me about your family. So now that box is checked of where he now knows a little bit of personal stuff about Takabe. So now he can work his hypnosis on him. And it goes back to where neither of them are really answering each other's questions, but Mamiya is doing the thing of where he already knows what he's asking about. And a really eerie thing, similar to the waves at the teacher's house, or the ambiance that happens when he's hypnotizing the lady doctor, is the inmates seem to be going crazy at this jail cell, and they're just all yelling and moaning in the background. It's muffled, but it's loud enough that it's its own score for this back and forth that the protagonist and antagonist are going through. And Mamiya tries to light his lighter, and the detective slaps it out of his hand because I think he has picked up that he doesn't exactly need light. He needs this fire. It's the fire that's doing it. Slaps it out of his hand. He admits that the things that he has been saying about, like, seeing his wife dead and his wife being so troublesome to him are true. Then he goes on a rant, and this is all in one scene, I'm pretty sure. Like, I don't think they cut until he's done going on this rant. And a lot of these situations that Takabe and Mamiya are in seem to be shot in one cut. And that's so impressive. The acting in this is phenomenal. And he's going on about how, I know my wife's a burden, and I know that my life is hard at home, but I know that work is harder, and I know it's because of work that my life at home is hard, because I can't just go and take care of my wife because I'm so invested in my job. And he starts talking about how he doesn't hate his wife, even though she's a burden. He hates psychopaths and degenerates that are like Mamiya. So this is where we find out what he hates. So the doctor that murdered someone hated men. The cop that murdered his partner hated his partner. The teacher, I guess it doesn't say at any point that he hated his wife, but I guess it's alluded to that he hated his wife because that's who he killed. So now we know that he doesn't hate his wife, he hates Mamiya. So this is when it gets my brain rolling of, oh, if he hypnotizes Takabe, Takabe's going to kill him. So why would he do that unless that's something he wants to happen? And Takabe now tries to take the initiative here and light Mamiya's lighter, and he sets it there, and it's like he's going to do his own trick onto Mamiya, and it starts pouring outside, almost like an act of God happens, and it's pouring, and it's raining, and it starts leaking from the ceiling, and the ceiling drips perfectly onto the lighter, just like a steady drip, and it rolls onto the ground, and it just imitates the situation that we had with the lady doctor. And now, in the situation where Takabe seemed like he was in charge and he was leading it, he is now becoming hypnotized by Mamiya, because the water has come in, and it's got the light from the light bulb going on it, and it's got a really cool like soot going through it from the lighter from where it hit that. But this Deus Ex Machina comes in, and it doesn't save the day for our hero. It saves the day for the villain, and it allows him, unless he somehow did it, it allows him to now mesmerize Takabe. And he starts going in on how, like, I'm so impressed by who you are and what you do and how you're able to, like, talk to me. It's similar to, I think, a Will Graham situation of Hannibal loves Will Graham because Will Graham is the same as Hannibal. They're both insane. And Mamiya's telling Takabe, if you do this, if you just release yourself, you'll become empty, and that's how you become happy. That's where happiness comes from. So get rid of the thing you hate, and you'll finally become happy and become devoid of these emotions. And that's where we kind of get a motivation for what Mamiya is doing. I wouldn't say it's as much of a motivation as it is just him using his silver tongue to get people to listen to him. That is when it jumps to the officer that's been watching the gate, runs up. I'm assuming he heard something going on, and he opens up the cell door, and it's like closed off, so it's not like bars that we can see through. It's closed off, and Takabe walks out. Did I just get a nosebleed? I'm tasting blood. I don't know what's going on. He walks out, and he asks the officer, he goes, did you tell him about me? Did you tell him about my wife? And he goes, well, he was asking questions, so I just told him a little bit. And he beats the shit out of the officer. And as the doors open, you can see Mamiya on the ground, like he beat the shit out of him. So Takabe has like officially snapped. He's just, if things aren't going his way, he's going to beat the shit out of you, and he's going to stop you from interfering with him solving what is going on here. So if he thinks he's getting hypnotized, he's going to knock your shit. If he thinks that you're giving him information that is going to help him hypnotize him, he's going to rock your shit. And we now see Takabe come home again. No, now Takabe brings Mamiya to like an office room with a bunch of other lawmen who we assume are all his superiors. And he has him start doing his whole skit or his shtick of like, who are you? Where am I? Well, what do you do? And he's doing it to Takabe's boss. And I think Takabe does this to show what they're dealing with and why he hasn't solved it yet. And his superior is starting to go like, what the fuck is going on? Like, what's wrong with this guy? Like, is he sane? Is he like right enough in the head to be able to talk to us? And Mamiya like leans over to Takabe out of like kind of a show of respect to Takabe and goes, is this your superior? And he goes, yeah. And he goes, well, that must be a drag. Like, because he's saying Takabe is respectable and able to do this dance of crime with him, whereas his superior can't. And they start freaking out after that. And in the background, when everyone's freaking out, they move, Mamiya and Takabe to the background when they were in the foreground. And you just see Mamiya try to say something and he like shoves Mamiya by his face across the room. Like, he's just breaking all these mental games with physicality because that's the only way he can get through to it because he doesn't know what he's working against. And now Takabe comes back home and turns off the washing machine as he always does, and he sees that dinner's been set out, and it's kind of a moment where you're like, oh, well, like, she did something right. Like, this could be a good sign. Pulls it up, and it's uncooked steak. Like, she thought she was making dinner. She couldn't. He sits down, and as he sits down, behind us, you see his wife just walk back into the laundry room, turn on the washing machine, walk back. So he gets back up, turns off the washing machine, and just sits back down. And this is like, I want to say this was the first time I noticed that it seems each time we come to Takabe's apartment, the camera angle is getting more personal. It's getting closer. We went from being this establishing shot of a room to being this handheld shot that is just right in his face, and it's watching him just have the last straw with his wife. And it's not exactly with her. It's with her illness. That's the biggest thing here. He very obviously loves his wife. He's just not, he doesn't have the mental fortitude to deal with what he's dealing with at work and to deal with what he's dealing with at home. And this is the first time where I started to think, oh, Takabe has officially been hypnotized. Because he goes and he's looking at his wife while she's sleeping, and he sees that she's like started to pack her bags to like go on the trip that they've been talking about. So that's like the only thing that's sticking in her head is that she really wants to go on this trip. And it cuts to him grabbing a kitchen knife, and then it cuts out of the apartment. And they are now in a really cool scene where I think they're sitting in a train, or it might be a bus. They're sitting in a bus, but you only see the back half of it and all the windows around them. And it's them two sitting next to each other, and all the windows are as if they're like floating through the sky. It's just surrounded by clouds that are moving, and there's a dreamlike hue over this scene. It doesn't want you to think this is real. It's not like where she tried to unalive herself and it wanted to kind of trick you a little bit. This is us in the mind of Takabe, and we know that he knows this isn't real, but it feels like a safe place for both of them. And he tells her, like, I'm sorry, we're not going to be going on the trip. I'm taking you somewhere else. We're going to figure this out, like, when this is all over, like when I'm done with this. And he ends up dropping her off at the hospital because he realizes that he almost did something that he would never be able to forgive himself with when he grabbed that knife. And he drops her off there. And I wrote down in quotes here, because Takabe's talking to the psychiatrist that's been like going to the meetings with his wife. And he says, "You look sicker than your wife to me." And it cuts back to Takabe, and he does. Like, her brain is deteriorating and his brain is deteriorating. He's going through such a battle with Mamiya that it's almost like he has dementia. It's not that he's not losing his memory, but he's losing himself in the same way that she is, but on a more metaphorical level. And now we go, this part doesn't matter a whole lot. I think this is just kind of an in-between, because earlier at one point Takabe drops off dry cleaning, and then I think this was just to show us that maybe he's not remembering things correctly. Takabe drops off dry cleaning earlier in the movie. Now he's going back to pick up his dry cleaning, and the guy's like, I don't have that. He gets a phone call from Sakuma. Sakuma's like, hey, you need to come over. Let's talk about this. He's like, I found something. I found some shit. And they're watching an old tape on hypnotism. It said the tape was from the late 19th century, and it's of a woman, and there's a hand on there that's just making the motion of an X, and then it's over. And they say it's like the earliest form of hypnotism in Japan, or the earliest record of hypnotism in Japan. And he's like, well, is there anything else of this? Like, what do we know about it? And the tape ends after he rewatches it, And Sakuma tells Takabe that the lady was later arrested for murdering her son and carving an X in his neck. So we now know that these are things that were happening before Mamia. I'm sorry, that where I'm from or where I live, there's it's Miami University in Ohio, and there's the Miamia tribe. And I'm trying so hard not to just say that every time I'm reading this guy's name. And I just keep jumping between it, and that's why I just kept typing out M on my thing, because I kept thinking Miamia, not Mamia. Where was I? Yeah, so she killed her son, carved an X in his neck. So we know this dates back over 100 years. And a cool thing here is Sakuma goes, do you know what they used to call hypnotism in Japan? Soul conjuring. And it's bringing up now, it's confirming supernatural affairs are happening. These two, this one, Sakuma being this science believer that everything is able to be proven through science and psychiatry, is now leaning towards this being an occult affair. And it jumps to where the psychiatrist Sakuma is going to a warehouse where he sees a man watching him out of the window, and then he goes to visit where Miamia was being held. Now, Mamia. See how I just did it right there? I didn't even think about it. Mamia was being held, and there's another dead monkey there on the shower. But if you remember from before, this shower and stuff was not in this room. So I knew that this was a dreamlike situation popping up for Sakuma. But on a first-time watch, I don't think I noticed that. Because also he sees the monkey with the X on it, and he turns, and Takabe's there. So it makes you think for a second that Takabe had switched roles with Mamia. But then he cuts back, and the psychiatrist snaps back into reality, and he says that Mamia is a missionary preparing the ceremony for something in particular. That's his job. And that's when he snaps back in. He says something because Takabe is like, so what is he doing? Like, where are you at? Like, help me out here. What does this lead for you? And he says he's a missionary preparing the ceremony. And then he comes back. And he's like, where am I? I'm so sorry. What just happened? I just zoned out. And then Takabe realizes it's probably too late for Sakuma after he zones out there and looks over into his other room, and he's got a big X on the wall. So this guy is in too deep. Takabe is officially alone on this now, because he can't use not only his partner, but his friend's help. He has no support system now because he can't use his wife either. And then we go to, it cuts to Mamia. He's breaking this wooden stool that is in his jail cell. And then Takabe gets there, and we find out that it is after Mamia has broken out by killing the guard with the wooden stake that he had just made out of his chair. Now Takabe is running to go find him. It cuts to Sakuma's apartment again. And they say that he handcuffed himself to the pipe above him and strangled himself. There's also blood all over. And it doesn't show it. I don't remember if it did. I missed it. But we can assume that maybe he carved in his own neck the X. Or maybe tried to. Or I'm missing something where someone else would have done it. I guess my theory later, when we get to the end of this, I'll tell you where I think this goes. Could go in here. But, yeah. They go back to the train now. Or not train. I wrote train here, but I think it's a bus. With the clouds around it in the surreal world. But it's no longer Takabe and his wife. It's just Takabe. So it's like him and his only little domain of safety. And this is him going to his final place. Takabe is now walking to the warehouse that Sakuma was dreaming of. And there's someone in there. He walks to the end of it, and it's obviously empty and dilapidated and abandoned. and we see like a silhouette behind a curtain, and he walks slowly up to the curtain, he pulls it away, and it's just like a picture without a face. So the picture is where we thought this person was, and there was definitely, because I rewound it, you definitely see the silhouette of a person. So it's going along with, the audience is now going as crazy as Takabe is, because we are now seeing all these things, and it's not even in the dreamlike sequences that he was in. Oh, yep. So he's sitting down now, and similar to the waves crashing again at the teacher house, the wind starts just roaring behind us, and the ambience is picking up because, like I said, there's not really a score that goes along with this, and the camera pans over to the right, and Mammy is there. So we know that if he wasn't, I just kind of Joe Biden right there. If he wasn't hypnotized before, there's now this next opportunity of it coming up. And Mamiya asks him, the important thing here is Mamiya asks Takabe why he let him escape. And this is like going back to their back and forth that they've been having the whole movie. When he asks him this question, instead of allowing him time to answer, Mamiya, for some reason, kind of out of character, and maybe because he thinks he's already won, answers the question before he can even say anything. And he's like, you let me escape because you needed me to not be locked up. That way you could try to finish the case. That way you could try to find more answers. And he says, you can't find any more answers if I'm locked away. Another cool quote that I had here is Mamiya says to him about the warehouse they're in. It says, anyone who wants to meet his true self is bound to come here. So it's also, that makes me think that every person that is under the hypnosis at some point sees this warehouse, because we saw Sakuma see it. But we're physically there with Takeba now. Or Takabe. Takeba. White person. Sorry. Takabe. And it's as Mamiya is gloating almost about how he's finished it. He's like, I've finally gotten you. Takabe shoots him. And he just pops him like 2 or 3 times, and he's on the ground, and he's looking up at him, and he goes, do you remember now? Because of all these times that you're telling me you can't remember these things. Do you remember why you're doing this? Do you remember what you've done? And he just looks at him and he nods. And as he's nodding, he looks up, and they're just like locked in this deep focused eye contact, and it cuts up real close to his hand, and he just does the X. And as he's like about to finish the X, Takabe pops him like 3 or 4 more times. Just, what is it? Rule 4 in Zombieland of double tap, or rule 3, something like that. Double taps the shit out of him here, because he has to make sure that he is dead. And then Takabe goes into another room that is in this warehouse. I think it's in the warehouse, because it just kind of cuts there. It doesn't show him walking there. And it's a phonograph. It's a really old, like, recording device that you could go and listen to. It's like the oldest form of, like, it was before record players, if you don't know what it is. And it's where it like spins and you like listen to it off of the texture that comes across it, I believe. I think that's how a phonograph works. And it seems that it's from the psychiatrist that that Mamiya has been idolizing, which is Mesmer. And Mesmer is this German psychiatrist that people used to think was working in dark arts and alchemy and magic, and was evil. And he's sitting in this flooded room listening to it. And then it cuts to a woman with an X in her neck being wheeled through the psychiatric hospital. And Takabe is back at the diner. So this part gets a bit ambiguous, and I'm just going to try to spitball off of what I think this means. So it's the woman with the X in her neck being wheeled through the psychiatric hospital, and Takabe is back at the diner. He seems like a weight is off of his shoulders, and the music is not this is one of the few times we have music, and it's kind of like mystical, but it's not as eerie and evil. So it's kind of upbeat like the beginning of the movie was when we saw the first kill. And the waitress that he's been talking to hands him his coffee, has this drink, and he's like smoking a cigarette. And she walks up, and we see her walking around, and then someone comes up, like another server, as if they're telling her what to do. And she walks away, and she walks the other end, she grabs a knife, and she starts walking towards that person that asked her to do something, and it's over. And the movie is just over. So what I think happens here is Takabe did not win. Takabe listened to the phonograph, and he is now hypnotized, and he is now the missionary that is prepping the ceremony in the way that Mamiya was. And he is, as we see him hypnotizing this waitress that was just serving him. I think the lady that was being wheeled through the psychiatric hospital maybe was Takabe's wife, but I don't think that means that he killed her, because it flashes to a nurse, and I'm wondering if this nurse hated having to deal with her as a patient. So the body looks like it's been dead for a while, so it's hard to tell who it was. And I even like rewound it to try to see it again, and I didn't want to Google it and see what other people thought. I wanted to like think on camera about what I thought happened. So I think that was his wife dying. My initial thoughts were he killed her, but maybe he hypnotized a nurse, and a nurse that it focuses on that's wheeling her may have done it. But I think the movie ends, and like I said, it's kind of ambiguous, so if you watch it, you might think it differently. And if you have seen it, let me know what you think the ending means, because I think it means the cycle is going to continue of someone being out there mesmerizing these people and forcing them to act in a way off of like their most primal instincts of hatred. And I assume going in the same direction as Mamiya, it's like to find happiness through emptiness. Get rid of the thing you hate and lose all feeling, and you will become happy. That is the whole movie. Wow, this is going to be my longest episode too. I'm sweating a little bit. I'm glad you can't see that sweat. The movie Cure is fantastic. I love how the story fits together and these perfect puzzle pieces that are given to you at what feels like the right pacing throughout the movie, and the acting is phenomenal. And this little creepy man, Mamiya, is just, the first time I watched it, and he's a big reason why I didn't give a rating at that time, is I didn't know how I felt about him. And watching it a second time, knowing that he's the one immediately doing it and trying to pick up the little pieces of what is hypnotizing people, made me appreciate his performance so much more. And Takabe is incredible. Watching this detective deteriorate, not only from his home life and losing his sanctuary with his burden of a wife, but to finding a criminal that he just can't figure out. It's incredible. Everything in this movie is done well. That's going to be it for this issue. I'm losing my voice because I just talked for like an hour and 20 minutes. And I think my card is about to empty out. So that's all I got for you. Cure, 1997, Kurosawa. If you haven't seen it, go watch it. If everything I just told you here was interesting, go see it. If you liked this form of episode, let me know. If not, I'll go back to just talking about topics. I feel like maybe I kind of rambled on during this. But yeah, that's about it. Smooches.